This church is ready for you to be here, honoring our past, invigorating our present, and dreaming our future. This is your church. Here we are home. Here we are whole. Let us begin. I share these words from the Reverend David Blanchard. Our call to community is from the Reverend Kathleen Rowlands. It's a Mother's Day prayer. Spirit of life, Father and Mother to us all, we enter into this time together with mixed emotions. This is Mother's Day, a day set aside to honor, celebrate, and in some cases, simply to reflect on those women who gave us birth. Some of us come to this day with joy, with strong and tender feelings for the women who have earned the right to be called mother. They not only gave us our lives, they are responsible for our shaping of spirit. They have fed us, played with us, nurtured us, listened to us. They have unselfishly given to us. They have loved us unconditionally. If our mothers are still living, we make the extra effort to stay in touch and find ways to give back a portion of the love which we have so abundantly received. If our mothers have died, we take time to cherish our memories of them, memories which may flood our eyes with bittersweet tears of longing. We miss them and feel that loss even more acutely on this day, while also being grateful for their strength, their wisdom, and beauty, and the gifts of life which they passed on to us. For others, this day is not a time for celebration, but rather a time for reflection. Perhaps we cannot bring ourselves to buy that Hallmark card, the one that waxes poetically about a mother's love or her presence in our lives. Rather, we may feel an absence through death or indifference. We may have complicated, difficult, unhappy associations with mother. Instead, then, may we use this time to reflect on those who have mothered us, the women in our lives who have shown their love for us, whether through motherhood or mentoring, those tough, gentle, truth-telling, loving, wise, whimsical women who have served as our teachers, our mentors, our guides, our friends. And on this Mothering Day, may we remember the great mother that sustains us, whose body is the very substance of our existence, the very ground we walk on, the source of our being. From whatever place of the Spirit we come this morning, let us enter into a time of silence, knowing that it is in silence where great things fashion themselves. Amen. Will you join in speaking the words of the chalice lighting as Pam lights? Welcoming all free seekers of truth and meaning, we gather to excite the human spirit, to inspire its growth and development, to respond morally and ethically to a troubled world, and to sustain a vital and nurturing religious community.
Our story this morning is Alma and How She Got Her Name by Juana Martinez Neal. Alma, Sofia, Esperanza, Jose, Pora, Candea had a long name. Too long if you asked her. "My name is so long, Daddy, it never fits," Alma said. "Come here," he said. "Let me tell you the story of your name. Then you decide if it fits." "Sophia was your grandmother," he began. "She loved books, poetry, jasmine flowers, and of course me. She was the one who taught me how to read." "I love books and flowers, and you too, Daddy. I am Sophia." "Esperanza was your great-grandmother," he continued. "She hoped to travel, but never left the city where she was born. Her only son grew up to cross the 7 seas. Wherever her sailor son went, so did Esperanza's heart." "The world is so big. I want to go see it, Daddy. You and me together. I am Esperanza." "Jose was my father," Alma's daddy said. "He was an artist with a big family, like many people had back then. Early each morning, he walked to the mountains and the plazas to paint everyday life. Sometimes I went along. Your grandfather taught me to see and love our people." "I wake up early every day, and I draw a lot too. This morning I drew a kitty cat for you, Daddy. I am Jose." "Pora was your great aunt. She believed the spirits of our ancestors are always with us, watching over us. When you were born, she tied a red string around your wrist, a charm to keep you safe." "Hello, Pora. It's me, Alma." "Candea was your other grandmother. She always stood up for what was right." "I am Candea." "I love the story of my name. Now tell me about Alma, Daddy. Where does that come from?" "I picked the name Alma just for you. You are the first and only Alma. You will make your own story." "Alma, Sofia, Esperanza, Jose, Pora, Candea. That's my name, and it fits me just right. I am Alma, and I have a story to tell." And that is, for now, the end of this story. In the book, the author chooses to close with a note saying where her own name comes from. I invite you now to take a moment to reflect on the story of your name, and then on the story you are writing for yourself with your actions in the world. When the moment is over, I will invite everyone to say their name out loud, followed by the words, "And I have a story to tell." So let's just take that moment. Are we ready? Okay, so we're just going to say our name, and then I have a story to tell. Here we go. I am Elizabeth Marjorie Dix Baldus, and I have a story to tell. Great job, everybody. Thank you so much.
And oh, we have stories to tell. Just as Alma's name in our story this morning represented values embedded in the names of beloved family members, so it is with this congregation. The stories we bring, the stories that lie in the air around us, and the stories we tell as we move forward, the imaginings. The elders of Albany Unitarian Universalist, those still among us and those no longer with us, have contributed to this congregation as we know it today. With all that we revere and that which we may wish to change, our forebears laid the foundations. Two aspects of their legacy contribute to significant actions and conversations to this day. Our forebears long ago inspired this congregation's passion for actions of social justice. For example, the legacy of mothers and grandmothers of this congregation may be seen in their commitment to the early days of Planned Parenthood in its infancy, and now through the advocacy of New York UU Justice for women's productive rights. There are threads. A passage in the history, First Unitarian Society of Albany, that passage may hold a clue to the importance today of forums, the creation of green sanctuary, your work to mitigate climate change, and more. I read this quote. Throughout the 5 years of the Unitarian Men's Club programs, from 1908 to 1913, the breadth of their interest in science and technology is remarkable. Lecture topics included New York's New Barge Canal, an exhaustive treatise on water purification, the modern way of driving machinery with electric motors. Think of that. Paleontology, the new X-ray diagnosis, sewage disposal, and treatment of tuberculosis. These are your forebears, the foundations. The women and men of this congregation have long been interested in and concerned with issues of the day. Our forebears long ago also adopted the form of worship services and seatings on most Sunday mornings from the Protestant tradition, from which the Unitarians and Universalists grew. I said the word worship services, and for those uncomfortable with the word worship, I would note its meaning is simply acknowledgement of worth. And that's what we're doing today, and I think every time we come together. On this Mother's Day, it seemed right to consider ways in which the mothers and fathers, the parents of this congregation, have been inspirational. Soon, Reese Satin will be sharing his response to that question. Following Reese, a plaque will be presented honoring the legacy of the sesquicentennial quilt, which was created in celebration of the 150th anniversary of this congregation. I'll read introductory comments sent by Dick Dana, Tina Raggio, one of the women who participated in constructing the quilt, and Lucy Haber, who contributed to the congregation's conversation, will speak of the inspirations both for creation and removal. Memorializing the quilt both honors the past and looks forward to the future. Pam Collins holds legacy and future as she addresses letting go and welcoming in. I am exceedingly grateful to Reese and Tina and Lucy and Pam for their contributions to this service. Reese.
I'm Reese Satin, and I have a story to tell. Reverend Lynn asked me to make some comments about mothers and fathers of this congregation that have been especially meaningful to me since I've been around a long time. I'm in a position to do that. I've had experiences as a member of this congregation which I cannot imagine having had I not been here and had you not been here. Those experiences have been represented as gifts of love by people who have changed the course of my life and my way of being in the world. As a caveat, those folks are not to blame for how I turned out. Nevertheless, I am indebted to them and am privileged to talk about my personal recollections here. I can't, and you don't want to sit through the entire list that I could present. So you need to bear with me and trust that the people I name are stand-ins for a variety of people who you don't want to have me list at this time, but are here and are represented. 35 years ago, when my family first came to what was then called Fusa, a man named Al Weisbard met us, like everyone else who walked in the door, with an alarmingly genuine, "Hi, cousin." It's quite a reception for the first time you walk through a door. Not satisfied with simply having greeted us, he passed us off to a wonderful man named Bob Day, a former reporter for the Times-Union, who took us around, showed us the ropes, and introduced us to people who had things for us to do and be a part of. This resulted in the very next Tuesday meeting Bob and Jean Blank. They ran something called the Supper Symposium, which was well-disguised. It was a well-disguised potluck supper, but really an intimate discussion group wherein everybody, in answering a question that Bob would prepare, would, in their answers, reveal themselves in ways you could not imagine in any other venue. Of course, like the stereotypic good mother, Bob did the question and Jean handled everything else. That included things like making the main dish, arranging the potluck, and all the other things that are involved in setting up a supper for at least 30 people in Channing Hall. It was quite an early introduction. Then the next person I'd like to highlight is someone named Ursula Poland. Ursula was born in Germany and was part of the Kindertransport in World War II. So she came to England as a refugee and grew up there. finally immigrating to the United States and working her way up to being the librarian for the Albany Medical College. No mean feat. But despite the fact that she had already buried one husband and was nursing a second, Ursula made time to be the co-chair of our sesquicentennial celebration. And she did it with intelligence, grace, and unfailing optimism. There were two other couples, again, out of many, that lived in ways that inspired me. First, Hughes and Eva Gemmel. They lived in a small, self-built home near Postenkill. Hughes never joined FUSA because he had no faith that organized religion, but had no qualms about supporting Eva's unfailing efforts to make this the congregation that it is today. And this is Eva's product, this history. There had been an earlier history that covered the congregation up to from 1842 to 1992. I'm sorry. This.
The first one was 100 years.
The first 1842. Thank you. I almost got this right. The first 100 years. Eva took the history from the first 100 years to the 150th year. And she didn't do it alone. She contacted people and had them contribute and then edited it all together, and you should read it. It will give you a perspective on where you come on Sunday morning. The second couple I wish to highlight here, you may actually have remembered one or both, and that's the Schroeders. They never missed an opportunity to support and improve this congregation. More than you know, not only this, but the rest of this physical plant and the culture that we follow is a result of their thoughts and deeds. Admittedly, if you knew him, Fred was the quiet one. But if you asked him, he would spoil you with his wisdom. Martha, on the other hand, did not necessarily wait for you to ask, but would impart advice no less valuable. I treasure the memory of those folks. Another person who is no longer with us that I have to mention is Laurie Lehrheimer. Laurie felt she had to withdraw from the congregation because of the misdeeds of her husband. But Laurie was such an inspiration to everybody who knew her. She continued with a circle of FUSA friends throughout her remaining life. Laurie's constant aura of hope, optimism, and caring lit all those around her. After spending time with Laurie, one always felt good and better for having shared her light. These are some people that inspire me that I mourn. But there are others still here. and you should meet them. I won't embarrass them with all my personal details, but they are well worth looking up. First of all, Chuck and Barb Manning, who do everything all the time. Then there's Donna and Peter Meixner, who will do anything, anytime, if you ask them. Linda Way, an unending source of compassion. You want to learn about compassion? Sit at Linda's feet and watch her. Sandy and Dave Stone, who care for everyone and are always willing to help. Betsy Miller, who will simultaneously stretch your mind and your heart. I could go on, but as I said, these are only examples. They are some of the inspiring giants on whose shoulders this institution stands, and I am privileged to honor them this Mother's Day. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Tina Raggio, and I am going to speak on the quilt that we made for the sesquicentennial year celebration, which was in 1992. The goal was to provide a gift for FUSA, as we called it at that time. This sesquicentennial quilt was made to hang in the sanctuary and resided there for the following 30-plus years. Alice Hotchkiss volunteered to coordinate this project. 12 volunteers joined to help construct the quilt. The group met frequently to share their ideas on what should be included and portrayed in the quilt. Lois Webb, another member, as well as an artist, took the ideas and translated them into a design that the group could accept, that would convey values and beliefs of the church community. Even at that time, inclusivity was being addressed. Of prime importance was to include the Unitarian first principle in creating the quilt, and I shall quote, "We covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person." Terry Way, another member who was an architect as well as an artist, participated in the quilt making, in that he enlarged the design to the desired size of 7 feet by 10 feet, from which templates were made for the blocks to be used in the quilt. Colors, fabrics, and techniques were decided in the process. Each member of this group was responsible for producing blocks for the quilt. It was a wonderful experience working with this group of women. At the time, I had just started learning about quilting, so I was quite a novice. Working with this group, I got to know them well, and working on the quilt increased my techniques as well as knowledge of quilting tremendously. The camaraderie that developed within this group at this time lasted and is still lasting for many years. Upon completion of the blocks, the task of putting the blocks together to form the quilt went to another member. Upon completion of that phase, the quilting began every Tuesday from fall of 1991 until spring 1992. Members of the congregation were invited to participate, and several added their stitches to the quilt. Indeed, every piece was a shared act of creation. The quilt was unveiled Easter Sunday, April 19, 1992. A brief description of the quilt. As you will see in the photo that we'll be showing later, the quilt was constructed with 14 by 16 applique blocks encircling an inner frame. The center of the quilt is the church, framed in one of the church's windows with its rounded top. Blocks surrounding the church display the jade plant, music, hands, symbols of other religions, doves, the flaming chalice, world globe, books, and the sculpture that we had for many years. At the base of the bottom of the quilt is an oblong foundation showing the silhouettes of people, the tall, the short, the young, the old, male, female, with the dates 1842 and 1992 on each end of the people. To quote Lois Webb, who said about the base of the quilt, and I quote, "We felt the people block should be at the bottom of the quilt, a foundation in the overall design. After all, people are the reason for the church." The quilt was taken down, cleaned, and restored by a conservator. It is now stored safely and securely. Initially, a beautiful piece of art was produced and lasted for years. However, over the past 30 years, many changes have occurred, some good, some not so. Changes seen, for example, family unions, sexual orientations, racial recognition, racial injustice, just to name a few. So, with 30 years of changes not displayed in the original quilt, a new symbol of artwork for FUSA should incorporate themes and/or current changes that addresses inclusion of today's world. And now,
Hello, I'm Lucy Haber, and I first want to acknowledge that for many reasons, removing the quilt was long and difficult in different ways for different people. When the quilt was created, people came together to make something greater than any individual effort could accomplish. Over time, we came to realize that some of the imagery in the quilt was harmful and failed to represent many in our community. As we move forwards in embracing our principles, we must see, hear, and engage everyone in our congregation and continue to work towards a community where all feel included, represented, and valued. As we step into the future, our culture and our congregation will continue to learn and grow in ways we cannot foresee. My hope is that we rise to embrace these future challenges with open hearts and open minds to foster a beloved and inclusive community.
Wait. Okay, well, you have to get closer.
these
are the words that appear on the plaque.
Okay, the words on the plaque state, "The sesquicentennial quilt pictured here was created in 1992 by members of this congregation to celebrate our 150 years together as a congregation. to honor important symbols of our community and to demonstrate our welcoming nature. We honor the members who lovingly conceived, designed, and created this beautiful work of art. Dorothy Bross, Marge Collins, Priscilla Crago, Beryl Drobak, Ruth Esty, June Hall, Alice Hotchkiss, Tina Raggio, Jan Sadden, Bunny Vaughn, Lois Webb, and Paula Yolas, overall designed by Lois Webb with assistance from Terry Way. Can you see that?
As individuals grow and learn, so does a congregation grow alongside and within a larger society of which we are all a part. As a religious community which strives to welcome all, we recognized in 2022 that the imagery of the quilt was no longer seen as welcoming. In removing the quilt from the sanctuary, we strive to rejuvenate and refresh our intention to continue growing in inclusivity to all. Thank you.
Yes.
As Reese did, I will be mentioning a few people, and they are by far not the whole list. One of my most cherished experiences at this church was a small group I facilitated in the early 2000s, comprised mostly of elders: Alice and Jack Hotchkiss, Ursula Poland, Peggy Slocum, and Thayer Heath. And Lois Griffin, were you in that group? I thought so when I saw you, okay. Listening to their stories of love and daring, dreams and loss, was more of a blessing than I ever could have imagined. Most of them are gone now, and I do miss them, but the memory of their friendship, mentorship, and courage will never leave me. I have a little piece of lamb's wool that I snagged off a fence when I was in Ireland in '87, and it still sits in the corner of my jewelry box. And if that is any indication, I'm one who doesn't let go of things very easily. I am no Maria Kondo follower. I am no devotee of a minimalist lifestyle or a decontextualized orientation, an idea once promoted by a colleague of mine. Letting go of the past is not only difficult emotionally, it's not really possible. The past is I don't have my words this morning, is inexorably stored in memory, in DNA, and in the very landscape we walk upon. And living without context gives us no foothold for moving forward. But as we all know, there are so many things about the past that need to be let go of. As Toni Morrison says in her book, Beloved, this is not a story to be passed on. There are so many things from the past that should not be perpetuated, not if we want to embrace conscious evolution, which is the cornerstone of Unitarian Universalist thinking. But as I was writing this, I got thinking that the past is like a braided cord. The healthy and the dysfunctional are often intertwined. Such as a brilliant thinker who held slaves, a pillar of social reform who cheated on his wife. Great builders and artists who were oblivious to the toxicity of their materials. So how do we get it all sorted? What are our best strategies for discernment? Another wise elder, who just happens to be a Catholic nun, so they come from everywhere, and who I might well consider a mother of my soul, has taught me that if you work from the heart, honestly, you will never make a mistake. I don't quite have her confidence that I would never make a mistake. I've certainly made many. But through the years, I have learned how to open my heart and trust to what I find there. And much of that learning has come from my participation in this congregation, where people aren't afraid to tell you when you've done a good job, or just as importantly, to reach out with love and compassion and correct you when you've missed the mark in order that we might do better. Opening the heart takes courage. It is no surprise that the root of the word courage is core, heart. A quick internet search tells us that, quote, in one of its earliest forms, the word courage meant to speak one's mind by telling all one's heart, end quote. Telling and speaking require an audience, a community, hopefully a caring one, which is what we strive to be. So that is what I suggest be our strategy as we strive to fulfill the aspirations and dreams that were articulated this past Sunday, such as accepting the challenges of anti-racism and inclusivity work, considering new and varied ways of doing worship, seeking ways to deepen our connections with one another, and giving voice to our young adults. I happen to love seeing them in the pulpit. Oh, yeah, how could I forget? We also have to choose a new minister. I do believe we strive to make this a safe place in which to open our hearts. We're not perfect, and each of us knows full well the potential for hurt if one leaves the heart unguarded. But I think we also recognize that an open heart is worth the risk, that living any other way is really only half living. And if my friend and mentor is right, and I think she is, ultimately, we will be successful. Moreover, as we proceed with our aspirations, we will know the joy and freedom of a heart that is open, steadfast, and courageous, that lets in the clean air of love and authenticity. So that is my blessing for us as we move forward. And let us take these thoughts into just a moment of silence.
As thoughtful and dedicated caretakers of Albany Unitarian Universalist, so many of you, volunteers and staff members, have worked throughout this year. Among you, you have attended countless, seemingly endless meetings, perhaps, read and written innumerable emails and texts, written policy and rewritten policy, created agendas, written reports, and edited reports, stood together on street corners, advocated for justice in halls of the Capitol, created budgets, and monitored the financial health of this congregation. We are grateful for all this and the many ways you contribute to the life of this beloved community. If you have served on the Board of Trustees or the Ministry and Operations team, please stand or rise in spirit and remain standing. Please remain standing. If you have participated in at least one of the 63 committees, teams, task forces, affinity groups, or book groups, please stand. Now, if more than one, will you do this, please? If you have participated in a service, offered one, served as a building host, a greeter, an usher, a service associate or pastoral care associate, multimedia tech or camera person, sung in the choir, led the choir, or offered other musical gifts, please rise in body or spirit. And will those of you who are out here do this again to indicate that you've participated in services, because there are many. If you have helped to make the church beautiful, created or made gifts of the bouquets we appreciate every Sunday morning, served on the arts and aesthetics team, tended the garden, updated the minister's study, please rise. You're already standing. If you have brought treats for coffee hour, brought food for a reception, hosted or attended a circle dinner or potluck, if you have brought your children to Sunday school, we'll be honoring those who lead and participate in programs for children and youth next Sunday at the youth service. If you have attended at least one service, and this one counts, please stand. Look around. It takes all of you, your time, your talent, and your treasure to make this church what it is, to contribute to its vitality, to grow in diversity and spirit, to work together seeking to make a difference in the larger community. It takes some people wearing 3 or 4 or more hats. For some, it means taking time to find your way. And for others, it takes time to rest. May you be blessed in days to come. Continue telling and making your story. Blessed are those who yearn for deepening more than escape, who are not afraid to grow in spirit.
Blessed are those who take seriously the bonds of community, who regularly join in celebration and learning, who come as much to minister as to be ministered unto.
Blessed are those who bring their children, who invite their friends to come along to join in fellowship, service, learning, and growth.
Blessed are those who support the church and its work by their regular, sustained, and generous giving, and who give of themselves no less than their money.
Blessed are those who know that the church is often imperfect, yet rather than harbor feelings of anger or disappointment, bring their concerns and needs to the attention of the church leaders.
Blessed are those who, when asked to serve, do it gladly, who realize that change is brought about through human meeting, who do the work of communities and stay till the end.
Blessed are those who speak their minds in meetings, who listen with open hearts to others, who keep alive their sense of humor.
Blessed are those who know that the work of the church is the transformation of society, who have a vision of beloved community transcending the present, and who do not shrink from controversy, sacrifice, or change.
Blessed are they indeed. In a tiny way of honoring Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Month, I offer this haiku from Basho, slightly adapted for our location and the day. The spring scene is well nigh prepared. The sun and tulips await. Amen. Go in peace and joy.
Please join with me in the words for extinguishing the chalice. You'll find them in your order of service and on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Those on Zoom are encouraged to join a breakout room for conversation and fellowship. You can click to accept the room assignment when it appears on your screen. Those in Community Hall are invited to attend what I understand will be a delicious coffee hour in Channing Hall. We especially encourage guests and visitors to stay with us for that coffee and refreshments. And we are so glad everyone joined us today, and this concludes our service.